Welcome back, class. We're almost at the end of the test. We have one question to go after this one. So this question, we're given a graph of sine of x minus cosine of x. And what we're asked to do is find the coordinates of each of these 3 points in the graph. So we have to identify what's special about point A, what's special about point B, and what's special about point C. And then together, we'll be able to figure out what each of these is. So the easiest point to figure out is A, because A is the y-intercept. Okay. And so being the y-intercept means that the coordinates of the point look like 0 for the x-coordinate, and you can read off that this is 0 x-coordinate. And then for the y-coordinate, well, it's on the graph, and so like every point on the graph, it has to be 0, comma, f of 0. Well, what's f of 0? It is sine of 0 minus cosine of 0. Okay. Well, sine of 0 is 0, cosine of 0 is 1, so this is minus 1. Okay, and so that is point A. It is 0 minus 1. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do C next, because C somewhat mirrors A, in that C is not a y-intercept, but it's an x-intercept. Okay, which means that the coordinates of this point look like something, comma, 0. It is the y-coordinate of this point C that is 0. And so this corresponds to a point where f of x is 0. So that is to say where sine of x minus cosine of x is 0. So what I'm really solving here is the equation sine of x is equal to cosine of x. I'm just simplifying that to get sine of x is equal to cosine of x. And so, upon doing that, what do we find? Well, we can pull out again our unit circle. Remember, the sine and cosine are the x and y coordinate, and you'll find two spots on the unit circle, that one and that one, where the x and y coordinates of your point are equal. Namely, you'll find the angle pi over 4, and you will find the angle 5 pi over 4. Okay, so those are the two between 0 and 2 pi, and this graph, note, is between 0 and 2 pi. And so the question is, which one is this? Is this the one that happens at pi over 4, or is it the one that happens at 5 pi over 4? Okay, and to answer that, we have to notice there's another x-intercept, namely that one right there. And so these are the two x-intercepts we found, pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4. So they have to be in order. So that one has to be that one has to be pi over 4, which means this one I'm looking at, it has to be 5 pi over 4. So this is 5 pi over 4, comma, 0. Okay, so that does A and C. We next up have to figure out what's special about point B. And so what's special about point B is that the tangent line here is horizontal. You might say like, oh, this is a max or a min, or a local max or a local min. All of those are different ways of saying this is a spot where the derivative is 0. So in order to find this point, we're going to have to take the derivative and set it equal to 0. Okay, so the derivative of sine of x minus cosine of x is going to be cosine of x minus sine of x. Okay, which is to say it is cosine of x plus sine of x. And so I want to know when that's 0, which is to say I want to know when is sine of x equal to minus cosine of x. And that, again, I can look up on the unit circle. So what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for points where the sine and cosine are the same except for their SIGN flavor of sine. That is, one is positive and one is negative, and it works either way. So that would be here, there's 1, and here, there's 1. So, namely, if you pull out your unit circle to play along, because I'm sure you cannot really read this, no matter how quality the video is. So x is 3 pi over 4, and x is 7 pi over 4. Those are the two places where the derivative is 0. Okay. So to make sure I'm pointing at the right one, I have to look and see, okay, that's one of them. Where's the other? The other, as it happens, is down here. And so that means that this is actually the first one, and that's the second one. So that means I'm looking for 3 pi over 4. Okay, and so this point, point B, its x-coordinate is 3 pi over 4. Okay. But we still haven't figured out what the y-coordinate is yet. And how do we figure out the y-coordinate? Well, to figure out the y-coordinate, we need to plug the x-coordinate back in. And remember, we don't plug it into the derivative. We plug it back into the original function. So we're going to plug it all the way back into this sine of x minus cosine of x. So f of 3 pi over 4. What is that? That's sine of 3 pi over 4 minus cosine of 3 pi over 4. Okay, and that is, well, what's sine of 3 pi over 4? It is root 2 over 2 minus, and then cosine of 3 pi over 4 is minus root 2 over 2. So that is to say this is 2 root 2 over 2, or just, if you want, root 2. Okay, so that is the coordinates of point B. All right, class. Until next time.